it comes to issues surrounding housing affordability, both for home ownership and for rental product. And so I think it's critically important when we're talking about the Build Back Better agenda to kind of urge our congressional delegation and folks back in Congress to really support this. There are $40 million worth of investments to rehabilitate existing affordable housing and to promote additional new affordable housing as part of this agenda and part of this legislation. And I think it's critically important that those investments be protected because we really have so many people right now who are in desperate need of support when it comes to housing, especially with the eviction moratorium ending right now. So, we've continued to make investments in the city of Tempe and tried to have a very progressive, forward-thinking agenda when it comes to approaching both, housing and human services. But I'm really excited to be here today with everyone on the phone, with Joan and Brian, who are also such tremendous leaders in this area and have been for such a long time now. So with that said, just looking forward to the conversation and really appreciate everyone for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Mayor Woods. So next, I will turn it to Joan Service. Joan, floor is yours.
Hi, good morning. Thank you again for having me. I'm pleased to be with such amazing and talented panelists. So thank you again for this opportunity. For the record, or for those that don't know me, my name is Joan Service, and I'm the Executive Director of the Arizona Housing Coalition, which is a statewide association working to end homelessness by advocating for safe, affordable homes for all Arizonans. I really am pleased to be talking about these issues because this is something that I've been passionate about for a while, and finally, people are using the same talking points and saying the same things that I've been saying, which is we're in an affordable housing crisis. And I think, unfortunately, never let a pandemic go to waste. Unfortunately, we have this pandemic, which has really shown the light on our affordable housing crisis and the value of home for far too many Arizonans that didn't have that safe place, that shelter in place options. Over 10,000 Arizonans didn't have that ability to shelter in place. Looking at the affordability that we struggle with in our state, the Build Back Better plan is both now and response to this pandemic. We need to, with the recently, the Congress passed the American Rescue Plan Act, which goes to the immediate response, the triage response to help individuals who are experiencing homelessness get that sheltering capability in a non-congregate setting so that they can prevent any transmission of COVID-19 or from even acquiring COVID-19. And then the American Jobs Act plan, that's really where we're going to see the significant investment in affordable housing creation, because that's something, creation and preservation, because that's really something that we need in this response. Again, over 10,000 Arizonans don't have that safe place to call home. As Eric and Mayor Woods mentioned, we have, a lack of affordable housing in our state. I think everyone is feeling that. And ultimately, that response is we need to build. I'll turn it over to Brian in a little bit, who can definitely speak to that. But when we talk about housing as it relates to this pandemic, as Eric mentioned, there's a lot of confusion about the eviction moratorium and who is protected. Ultimately, if we get more housing units created and preserved, we can make sure that all Arizonans have that safe place to call home. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Eric.
Thank you, Joan. Really appreciate that. I think, it goes without saying, with the census count still coming, but that Phoenix is still one of the fastest growing metro areas too. And so the need for housing is only going to increase. So with that, Brian Swanson, the floor is yours.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Eric, for allowing me to speak on such an incredibly important issue. It's great to be in the presence of Mayor Woods, a good friend of mine, and Joan, as a member of the Arizona Housing Coalition, myself, and our company as a member. Joan does a great job leading this advocacy effort in this state. So thank you both for allowing me to join you. My name is Brian Swanton. I apologize profusely for not being on video. I told Corey I have a face for radio, but I'm actually in a car without a headset, so I had to hold the phone up to my face here. So I apologize for that, but hopefully the audio is good. So I'm the president and CEO of Gorman and Company. We've got 125 affordable housing properties in 9 states across the country. Gorman's the largest producer of affordable housing in the state of Arizona, one of the top 20 producers of affordable housing in the United States. We've been around since 1984, based in Madison, Wisconsin, but have our largest operation in Phoenix and in the state of Arizona. We've got 450 employees across the country, 45 of whom reside here in Arizona. Our team is designed, constructed, and is operating 2,000 affordable housing units in 22 properties across the state, all of which were developed using federal housing tax credits, was a signature element of the Back Better plan. And I just want to speak with you a little bit in terms of our experience about what we're seeing on the ground in terms of leasing our units and the need for more housing and the types of projects we're able to accomplish with using the federal low-income housing tax credit along with project-based rental subsidies. Unfortunately, each property that we own in Arizona has an average waiting list of 450 households, okay? Some of our properties have waiting lists in excess of 2,000 households. And so what this means is we have 10,000 families, seniors, disabled, veteran households waiting to get into our units just in Arizona, which remain 100% occupied at all times. So the shortage is very severe. I get calls regularly, almost daily, and I just can't tell people that I can house them because there's hundreds and sometimes thousands of people on the waiting list ahead of them. And some of these folks are in real dire straits and facing homelessness, if not already homeless. The federal housing tax credit program was created during the Reagan administration back in 1986, part of the Tax Reform Act, but it's been continued and expanded under every president since. And the program works. It's got strong bipartisan support because of that. My firm has used federal tax credits to build affordable housing all over the state of Arizona in places like the Mesa Heights neighborhood in Yuma. We've built housing next to Agua Fria High School in Avondale and downtown Nogales at the Bowman Hotel, which we turned into affordable senior housing just 1 block from the U.S.-Mexico border crossing. We recently finished building 100 units of housing for formerly homeless veterans next to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, as well as 50 units of supportive housing for veteran women and veteran families at Valor on 8th and Tempe under the leadership of Mayor Corey. It was actually Mayor Woods, who was a council member at the time, who told me about this site opportunity, which resulted in these 50 veteran housing units, which is a very exciting project for us. We're now using federal housing tax credits on the $200 million redevelopment dilapidated public housing around top of Phoenix, the largest affordable housing redevelopment project in the history of Arizona. And that's going on right before your very eyes right now. Under construction, and we'll soon be retrofitting over 400 units of existing housing at the Tucson House as well, which is Tucson's tallest residential building. And there we'll be using both housing tax credits as well as historic tax credits. So this just gives you a flavor of the different types of projects that can be accomplished with the tax credit program. The federal housing tax credit is a powerful tool. It works. Without it, none of these projects would have been possible, plain and simple. It's just the math doesn't work without the federal tax credit investment. The Build Back Better plan includes the most comprehensive and desperately needed investment in affordable housing since 1986. So this would be the single largest investment, federal investment in affordable housing since the Tax Reform Act of 1986. And it includes a long overdue of the expansion of the low-income housing tax credit program, but also a significant expansion in housing choice vouchers, which provide much-needed rental assistance to extremely low-income households. Over the past 34 years, the federal tax credit program has produced nearly 96% of all new affordable housing in this country and has received unwavering support from both Republicans and Democrats in Congress throughout its existence. All tax credit financed properties are also mandated by Section 42 of the Internal Revenue Code to accept Section 8 housing choice vouchers. Not all market rate properties are not required to do that. So every affordable housing unit that we build with tax credits is required by federal law to accept Section 8. Only 40% of the affordable housing development proposals submitted to the Arizona Department of Housing each year for federal tax credits actually receive an allocation of federal tax credits. And that's just due to the federal cap right now on the program. And so the Build Back Better program is going to increase the size of the program by 50%. Means that 60% of the viable affordable housing proposals in the state don't get built. That's a travesty right now. I mean, these are developers that have viable projects, site control plans ready to go. We just can't get the units built because there's not enough tax credits to do it. Further, less than 25% of the households who qualify for rental assistance in the state actually receive it. And that's actually a national statistic. And many who do receive rental assistance can't find viable housing in the rental market after waiting unwillingly 5+ years. They get a voucher in the rental market and it's available. So they end up having to give the vouchers back. Out in Glendale, there's 1,000 Section 8 rental vouchers that the city administers. There's 100, a full 10% of their vouchers aren't being used, not because there isn't demand. They have thousands of people wanting those vouchers, but they can't find housing with the voucher. So they end up giving the voucher back to the city. That's just a travesty. So the Build Back Better plan addresses both of these issues in a very comprehensive way. The opportunities are out there. The demand for the housing is clearly unprecedented. I've never seen anything like this in my 25-year career. We simply need more resources to get units built. I was lecturing last night at the University of Wisconsin in their MBA program in a real estate class, and one of the students said, "Why don't we just allocate more federal tax credits?" I said, well, that's the simple answer, yes, but getting that to happen is the challenging part. So recently in Arizona, we're using federal housing tax credits to be able to save the Kofelt property at 19th Avenue in Buckeye. Well, we saved an entire school in the process. In 2013, the housing authority was actually looking to demolish 300 units of Truman-era public housing known as Kofelt at 19th Avenue and Buckeye. The Board of Supervisors became concerned, Rose Wilcox at the time, particularly that the Kofelt closing would result in the closure of Hamilton Elementary School. So the county entered into a public-private partnership with my firm. We raised $48 million for the use of the federal tax credit to save Kofelt. So tax credits can be used not only to produce new housing, but also to save existing housing going away. It's a very, very powerful tool. The lack of affordable housing in our state is a crisis, clearly. We know expanding the federal tax credit offers real and immediate solutions to the problem. And it's pretty much that simple. It's supply and demand. So thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time, Eric.
Ryan, thank you for that. Thank you for that comprehensive covering of the issue and of your work in it and sharing your subject matter expertise too. So with that, Cal, I will turn it over to you for questions.
Yes, thank you, Eric, and thank you to all of our speakers for those really great remarks, and excited for a little bit more discussion here in our Q&A period. If you are joining this webinar and you would like to ask questions of any of our speakers, you're welcome to drop your questions into the chat box, and then I will read them aloud for our speakers. And if you have a question for one of our speakers specifically, please denote that in your question. Otherwise, I'm going to open that question up for any of our speakers who would like to answer them. So again, if you have any questions and you want to drop them into the chat box, we'll make sure those get asked of our speakers, and we'll have a bit of a discussion here. And while our folks who are joining the webinar get any questions into the chat box, we did have a couple of questions that were submitted ahead of time by folks who were unable to join the event but wanted to make sure their questions were asked. So I'm going to ask one of those now and then pause for any additional questions afterwards. And this question's pretty broad. It's for any of our speakers who would like to answer this. But the question is, how is a lack of investing, I should say, let me start over. How has a lack of investment in housing impacted you and your community?
I'm happy to take that to start. So it's had a huge impact on our community. You have people, everything from seniors living on fixed incomes to recent graduates from Arizona State University, the largest public university in the country, who are trying to still find housing in the city of Tempe. I've got many people who have lived here for their entire lives. They've had kids go to school here and have now talked to me about, the worry of having to move out of the city because they're having a hard time finding attainable housing. At the other end, you've got the people who are recent graduates who are graduating with bachelor's degrees and master's and doctoral degrees. But many times that first job out of college doesn't pay a lot of money for that first few years. And a lot of these people want to stay and keep that intellectual capital here in the city of Tempe, but they're really struggling to find housing. And so that has been a huge, huge challenge. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago, I had a meeting with 9 hoteliers in downtown Tempe who said, we really need more affordable housing for the people who are actually folding sheets, whatever, in our hotel rooms, to the folks who are bartending, to the folks who are cooking the food and waiting tables. None of these people, have the ability for the most part to live in the city of Tempe. They're many times living way out in the West Valley and driving in 40 to 45 minutes each way every day to work, therefore burning up all of the income they're making at their jobs just when it comes to commuting. And so obviously that's something that we really have to get a handle on in the community. And so I have seen that impact being a mayor up close and personal. For the folks that I've talked to have just said, Corey, if we don't solve this housing crisis that we have in the city of Tempe and across the region, we're going to have a really hard time being competitive moving forward. And just, one quick final point. There was a study that was commissioned before I even became mayor that said the city of Tempe is going to need approximately 11,000 more units of both affordable and attainable housing by the year 2040, just to simply keep pace with current demand. So we really have to do everything we can to get as many shovel-ready affordable housing projects ready to go here in the city of Tempe. As Brian talked about, Gorman and Company has been the leader in the city of Tempe in terms of producing those projects, and they have housed so many people within our city, and we look forward to them doing even more within our city boundaries. But I have seen the impact of not having enough affordable housing stock in our community each and every day when I'm talking to residents and employers.
If I could piggyback on what Mayor Woods is talking about, obviously what you just illustrated is the social determinants of health and how housing is that foundational support for so many things. The mayor mentioned the commute. Not only is it taxing on that individual's gas prices and taking away that income, but obviously it impacts climate, and it also impacts that individual's mental health, that social and mental health by being stuck in that commute for so far too long. And when we talk about social determinants of health, we also need to think about, as Mayor Woods talked about, students, but I'm thinking about both elementary students that, if families that are forced to move because their rent keeps rising, that child that is in that family is further delayed in their educational attainment. They're further behind. And then seniors, if they can afford a place to grow old, they can age in place instead of that costly institutional nursing care so obviously we want to make sure seniors can age in place. But as Mayor Woods talked about, we need to have affordable, attainable housing for many Arizonans who are hardworking. The National Low Income Housing Coalition, an advocacy organization that we partner with, oftentimes they put out a report that in Arizona, you need to earn an average full-time worker needs to earn $22.30, which is the hourly wage needed to afford a modest rental home without spending more than 30% of his or her income on housing costs, which is that kind of standard, data point that we use. So $22.30, when far too many of Arizonans are working low-paying minimum wage jobs or are underemployed, working jobs as a teacher and as an Uber driver. So we need to make sure that there's affordable housing available that's affordable. And I think these investments that are written into the Build Back Better plan are exactly that. That'll help individuals get that housing that they can afford.
Can I just actually make one other quick comment too, just about kind of piggybacking off of some of that as well? I'll use a very personal story about this. I work two jobs. I'm the mayor of the city of Tempe. I also have a job at Arizona State University. I sold my own home back in June of 2020. And when I began a home I'd owned for 14 years, right in the central portion of Tempe, right south of the 60. And when I went to I wanted to buy another home, but I couldn't find anything in the price range that I was looking for. I've now been renting in the downtown area for the last 15, 16 months. It's actually been a great experience to be able to walk to work and live so close to both of my employers. But at the same time, I'm a 42-year-old single man, who's the mayor of a city. And every time I go online and I look for housing, everything is way too expensive. It would cause me to, frankly, but I don't need a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house starting at $550,000. But that's pretty much all you see that's out there. I would urge anyone to go online right now and try to find something under $400,000 within the city. It's going to be a pretty hard search. And if it's there, it's likely to get snatched up by someone, and more than likely an investor, within 24 to 48 hours. So this is not just something that people talk to me about on a regular basis. It's something that I've experienced personally in terms of wanting to purchase another home, but wanting to make sure that I'm not spending more than 30% of my take-home income on a mortgage. And there are so many people in that situation here. And quite honestly, it's unconscionable to me that people who are living and working in the city of Tempe, working 30, 40, 50 hours a week, wouldn't be able to find clean, safe, quality, attainable housing within our city. And frankly, it's my charge and the entire city council's charge to reverse that trend.
Thank you, everybody, for your answers to that question. I feel like I'm learning a lot in this panel, too, so I really just appreciate all of the knowledge that you guys are sharing with us. An additional question that was submitted ahead of time by someone who wasn't able to join is also for any of our panelists who would like to answer it. And that question is there anything that you'd like to say directly to Arizona's congressional delegation as they consider the Build Back Better agenda, in particular, its investments in housing?
Well, this is Brian Swanton with Gorman and Company, and I speak with a lot of our congressional delegation on a regular basis. Both our senators and our House representatives. And we talk with them directly and with their staffs about the critical need. And I will tell you, I don't think I need to convince many of them. Some of them maybe need some nudging more than others, but all of them tell me the same thing. The one thing that they hear from their constituents today, more than any other issue that they get called about, is the lack of affordable housing. And I know Corey's made that comment as well. That's one thing he hears from his constituency at the local level more than any other topic is affordable housing. So they're going out and having, community meetings. They get calls to their office. The number one topic almost across the board is housing and a lack of housing affordability. So they're getting the message. And luckily, we have a lot of bipartisan support. Both of our senators as well have co-signed previous versions of a bill that would expand the housing tax credit program. And so, and a lot of the Republican and Democratic caucuses stand behind this and have sponsored similar legislation. So, the support's there, the demand's there, they're hearing from their constituencies. So our job is to just put a human touch and let them know what we're experiencing in the field, on the ground, in our leasing offices, and just encourage them to support the plan, particularly around expanding project-based rental subsidy, tenant-based rental subsidy through expanded Section 8, as well as expanding the low-income housing tax credit program. And one thing I tell them all the time is that you can throw 100 million Section 8 vouchers into the system. That's not going to solve the problem, because there's just not, even the ones that have vouchers today can't find adequate housing that'll accept their voucher. So we need more voucher support, rental support for low-income people who need it. Only 25% of those who qualify actually receive the assistance that they need. But we need more housing units produced in a big way in order to expand the number of units available for people with and without rental support.
Mayor Woods, do you want to go first?
Sure. I would just say, if I could kind of give any message to our congressional delegation, it's that, the $40 billion actually that's included in this plan is really critically important when it comes to the ability to rehab existing affordable housing in our community, but also to make significant investments in future affordable housing. We actually at the city of Tempe put out an RFP a few months back to make sure that we have a group of affordable housing developers that we can call upon when we actually have opportunities for affordable housing. We're currently in the city taking $1.2 million of our own money through our Hometown for All program to remediate 5 city-owned lots on Apache Boulevard for the purpose of actually working with affordable housing developers who want to be here in the city of Tempe. And there are a number of developers who are actually on that short list who really do want to get their hands on that land for shovel-ready projects. But I would say the biggest thing is it's important to support this huge investment. And as Brian talked about, the biggest investment since 1986 when it comes to affordable and attainable housing. It's the right thing to do for people who are living here of all different backgrounds, occupations, income levels, but it also, frankly, is the right thing to do when it comes to the business community. As I talked about earlier, when I talked to folks who were the hoteliers, when I talked to people at the Chamber of Commerce and a lot of other folks who are employers and job creators in our city, one of the things they talk about all the time is, we would like to bring jobs to the city of Tempe, but we also have to ensure that our employees have housing within your city. So it's not just something for individuals that's kind of divorced from the job market. It's critically important to individuals, but it's also important for the future of our business community and for the overall health of our economy. So I would definitely urge our congressional delegation to make sure that they support this money because it's a huge investment and it definitely needs to be made.
I'll just say that in addition to what Mayor Woods and Brian shared, it's investments now for savings later. We're going to see healthcare cost savings, education savings, economic development investments as a result of the investments into affordable housing. But I think it also addresses, some critical areas that our community, our state, our country needs to address, and that is, the racial inequities that exist in accessing housing. A lot of the policies that are included in the Build Back Better plan speak exactly to that, addressing easy access to rental housing and to first-time home ownership opportunities. And I think that that's something that will bridge the racial wealth gap that exists in our community in housing. So I think that that's a very crucial component that our congressional members need to be paying attention to. Probably diving a little bit too much into the policy weeds, I would say to our congressional leaders that, very similar to the American Rescue Plan Act and, that kind of triage response, getting dollars out the door to help families and individuals and households in need. I would just caution or urge our congressional leaders to really allow our local leaders and administrators of the funds to be unshackled from, burdenous and onerous administration and bureaucracy and regulation. I think many have seen and heard the slowdown in getting emergency rental assistance out the door. And I think it's, really burdensome to our local administrators that are doing this Herculean effort in getting dollars out the door, and families are in crisis. They're clearly experiencing a housing crisis. But what we think, at least at the Housing Coalition, we would really urge our congressional leaders to, if a family or an individual has already engaged in some kind of help system, whether it be receiving SNAP benefits or the temporary assistance for needy family funds, or if they're already on access, then clearly they've already touched the state government, help system. They're clearly they're struggling, and so and COVID-19 has really maybe exacerbated their financial savings. So let's get them the help that they need as quickly and as fast as possible.
Thank you all for those answers and just everything that you've said in this press conference. This has been really fantastic. And that actually concludes our questions for today. So I'll hand it back over to Eric for any closing and final remarks.
Thank you, Cal. And first, a big thank you to Mayor Woods, to Brian and Joan for your time, your energy, and your remarks and insight and knowledge that you shared on this panel. Like I'll echo what Cal said, I learned a lot too, just listening to each of you speak and share your knowledge and insights. Thank you to members of the community and press who were able to join us this morning. And I think just the final few points I would add is that not only are these investments critical now and they're substantial, but making them now will also save money in the future. In fact, the National Low Income Housing Coalition estimates that constructing 100 affordable rental homes does generate $11.7 million in local income, $2.2 million in taxes and other revenue for local governments, and 161 local jobs in the first year alone. So not only are these investments going to help address what the crisis that has been very clearly described in Arizona, but will lay a foundation for economic growth and stability going forward. So again, thank you for your time, knowledge, insight, and we'll talk soon. Thank you again.
Record.